There are moments in life when love becomes a quiet mission, when actions speak louder than any words ever could. It all began with the simple realization that the people who once sacrificed everything were now silently struggling. The bills piled up, the smiles faded, and the air in the house felt heavier with each passing day. There were no complaints, no cries for help, just tired eyes pretending everything was fine. But it was clear that behind those brave faces was worry, fear, and an unspoken sense of defeat. Seeing that pain every day felt like a knife turning slowly. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The decision to step in didn't come from pity, but from a deep sense of love and gratitude. It was about giving back to the people who had once given everything. But there was no intention of grand gestures or public recognition. It had to be silent, almost invisible, like a secret act of kindness that didn't need applause. There was something pure in the idea of helping without being seen, of watching their world become a little lighter without needing to take credit. That kind of love doesn't need witnesses. It only needs heart. The plan wasn't made overnight. It started small, almost like a whisper of hope. Every time an extra dollar appeared, it was tucked away. Every small expense avoided became a step closer to something bigger. It meant skipping personal wants, saying no to things that once seemed necessary, and choosing sacrifice over comfort. The process was slow and quiet, but it built a sense of purpose. Each time that money was set aside, it wasn't just currency, it was a promise. A promise that one day, all those nights of quiet saving would turn into something beautiful. There was no resentment in those sacrifices. In fact, there was pride. Each choice not to spend became a silent thank you to the past, to the people who once went without so someone else could have more. It was more than saving. It was rewriting the cycle of giving. The more the fund grew, the lighter the heart felt, because it wasn't about the amount, it was about the meaning behind it. It wasn't charity, it was love disguised as effort. And so the goal became clear, to quietly gather enough to make a real difference. The thought of slipping that money into a place where it would be found without suspicion felt almost poetic. It wasn't about recognition. It was about healing something unseen. Every dollar collected carried the hope that it could ease the weight on their shoulders, even just a little. Those first steps, deciding to help and saving in secret, were more than actions. They were emotional commitments, a journey built on love, patience, and silent strength. Because sometimes the greatest acts of kindness are the ones that no one ever sees, the ones done not for praise but for peace. The night chosen for the act was calm, the kind of quiet that makes every sound feel heavier, more meaningful. The plan had been forming for months, and when the moment finally arrived, it carried both excitement and fear. There was no intention to make a grand gesture or to be noticed. It had to feel effortless, like a blessing that simply appeared. $10,000, carefully saved through months of sacrifice, sat neatly folded inside an unmarked envelope. It didn't look like much, but it carried the weight of countless hours of work, unspoken emotions, and the silent wish to ease someone else's burden. The walk to the house felt longer than usual. Each step was heavy with emotion, every heartbeat echoing the question of whether this was the right thing to do. But love often asks for courage, the courage to give without expectation. The street light flickered as the mailbox came into view. A deep breath, a moment of hesitation, and then the envelope slid quietly through the slot. No note, no name, no clue to trace it back. The money would just be there one morning, waiting like a quiet miracle. The act was done with trembling hands, but a peaceful heart. For the first time in a long while, there was a sense of relief, like something broken had finally begun to mend. In that moment, the world felt lighter. There was no need for thanks or recognition. Just the comforting thought that the people who once struggled might wake up to a small sign that the universe hadn't forgotten them. It wasn't about being the hero. It was about giving hope without being seen. Sometimes the most powerful form of love is the one that doesn't announce itself. But secrets rarely stay locked inside for long. A heart full of emotion often looks for someone to share it with, someone trusted enough to understand without judgment. There was one person who seemed safe, someone who had always been close through every storm and secret, a sister, a confidant, a mirror of shared childhood memories. Trust came naturally after all. It had been built through years of laughter, late night talks, and promises never to betray one another. So the truth was whispered in confidence. It wasn't a boast, but a moment of vulnerability. The story of the hidden money and the reason behind it was shared with a trembling voice and an open heart. The words carried pride, but also the need for someone to understand why it had to be done quietly. It felt good to finally let someone in on the secret, to not carry it alone. That moment of trust felt sacred, almost like sharing a piece of one's soul. The hope was that it would stay between two hearts, sealed by loyalty and love. But sometimes, even the purest intentions can be met with betrayal waiting quietly in disguise. What began as a secret act of love was now in the hands of someone who could either protect it or destroy everything it meant. The night chosen for the act was calm. It's the kind of stillness that makes even small movements feel louder than they should. Months of saving, hiding, and planning had finally led to this one quiet moment. The envelope in hand didn't look like much, plain, unmarked, nothing that would draw attention. But inside it sat $10,000. The result of countless small sacrifices and moments of restraint. It wasn't about the amount. It was about what it represented. Each dollar carried a wish, a prayer for relief, a silent thank you for years of love and sacrifice. The act itself felt sacred. No need for anyone to know. No note, no name. Just the quiet hope that it would be found and bring comfort. The walk to the house felt heavier than expected. Every step was loaded with emotion. Each sound amplified by the weight of the decision. The air was thick with the fear of being seen, but also the thrill of doing something purely from the heart. The streetlight above flickered, casting a dim glow as the mailbox came into view. There was a heartbeat of hesitation, a brief moment where turning back almost seemed easier. But the feeling passed. The envelope slid through the slot with a soft sound, disappearing into the darkness. That simple act felt like a release, as if all the quiet effort, the worry, and the hope had finally found their purpose. There was no need for proof or gratitude, just the comfort of knowing that tomorrow would bring surprise and relief to the ones who needed it most. Walking away from that mailbox felt like walking away from a secret gift to the universe. There was peace in anonymity, in the idea that love could exist without acknowledgement. But holding such a secret alone began to feel too heavy. There's something about human connection that makes silence unbearable when it carries too much meaning. The thought of telling just one person started to grow. It wasn't about showing off or seeking validation. It was about needing someone to understand the why behind the act. Someone who would hold the secret carefully and see the heart behind it. The choice of who to tell came naturally. The closest bond, built on shared history and countless small confidences, seemed unbreakable. It felt safe, even comforting, to let the secret out to just one trusted person. The words came softly, almost like a confession. The truth of what had been done, why it had been done, and how it had to remain between them. It was meant to stay a promise of silence between two people who had always trusted each other completely. For a brief moment, everything felt right. The secret was shared, the burden was lighter, and the act of love finally had someone who knew its depth. There was no suspicion, no fear, only faith in the bond that had always felt stronger than anything else. But trust, once given, has the power to either heal or destroy. And sometimes, the ones who seem safest to trust are the ones who hurt you the most. It didn't take long for everything to start unraveling. Just a few days after the envelope had disappeared into that mailbox, whispers began to spread through the house. There was excitement in the air, the kind that comes from unexpected blessings. The parents had found the money, confused but grateful, convinced that fate or kindness had somehow found its way to their doorstep. They couldn't believe it, their eyes full of tears, their voices trembling with relief as they spoke about how the world still had good people in it. It was everything that was hoped for. The happiness, the ease, the gratitude. But it came with an unexpected twist. When asked if anyone knew where it came from, the silence was brief. Then, with the calmness of someone who'd rehearsed the words, the sister spoke up. She said it was her. She said she had been saving, working extra hours, doing things quietly to help the family. The room filled with shock, then pride, then tears of joy. The parents embraced her, praising her for her selflessness, calling her the blessing they never saw coming. It was a moment filled with warmth for everyone but one. There was disbelief at first, a numbness that made it hard to even process what had happened. How could she take something so sacred, something done in love, and make it hers? Every emotion collided at once: anger, confusion, betrayal. But the loudest feeling was silence. It wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, about something that was meant to stay pure being twisted into a lie. The words echoed again and again, her voice claiming credit for something that wasn't hers. And there was no space to interrupt, no courage to expose the truth right then. The parents looked at her like she was a miracle, their pride shining so brightly it almost hurt to look at. They hugged her, thanked her, told her how proud they were. In that moment, it felt like the entire world had shifted. All the effort, all the sacrifice, all the heart behind that secret act of love had been stolen. Not just in words, but in meaning. Watching her accept their gratitude so easily was like watching someone rewrite reality, one false smile at a time. And yet, there was silence. No confrontation, no shouting, just a quiet storm building underneath. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was heartbreak. So maybe it was the unwillingness to hurt the parents by revealing the truth. Because their happiness, even if built on a lie, was something they hadn't felt in a long time. It was easier to let them believe, to let them feel proud of one child rather than torn between two. But beneath that silence, something broke. That night, when everyone celebrated the supposed act of generosity, one heart sat quietly in the corner, shattered but unseen. The sister's lie had given the family joy, but it had taken away something that could never be returned. The purity of a secret born from love. The days that followed felt like living inside a dream that slowly turned into a nightmare. Every conversation, every smile, every moment inside that house carried a quiet ache. It wasn't just the lie itself that hurt. It was the way it kept growing. The sister walked around with the kind of confidence that came from being loved and admired, and the parents couldn't stop talking about how proud they were of her. Every word of praise felt like a needle, a small reminder of what had been stolen. The silence that once felt like an act of love now felt like a prison, strapping every emotion inside until it became almost unbearable. There were times when the urge to speak up became overwhelming. Watching the parents beam with pride, hearing them tell relatives about how lucky they were, how their daughter had saved them, it all felt like slow torture. But love can be strange. It makes people hold their pain tightly just to protect others from breaking. There was fear that telling the truth would destroy the family's happiness, that it would turn their joy into disappointment and confusion. So the truth stayed hidden, buried beneath a calm expression and polite smiles. Each passing day, the distance between the two siblings grew. The sisters seemed to thrive on the attention, glowing in the light of their parents' affection, while the one who had given everything faded quietly into the background. She told stories about how hard she'd worked to save the money, added little details that made it sound even more convincing. The parents listened with admiration, completely unaware that every word was another lie layered over the truth. There was something almost surreal about watching it all unfold. The sisters' laughter, the parents' gratitude, the way everyone celebrated her kindness. It was like watching a play where everyone knew their lines except the one person who couldn't speak. Inside, the emotions clashed in painful ways. Pride for seeing the parents happy mixed with heartbreak from knowing it was all built on a lie. It became harder to even look her in the eye, harder to pretend that everything was fine. Late at night, when the house grew quiet, the reality of it all would come crashing in. The image of that envelope, the secret joy of doing something good, the trust shared in confidence, all of it now felt tainted. The lie had not only stolen the act itself, but the meaning behind it. There was no way to undo it, no way to take back what had been given or said. Watching her take the credit, watching their love and admiration pour over her while pretending not to care, it became a quiet kind of heartbreak. It wasn't dramatic or loud, but it cut deep. The silence that once felt noble had turned into a wound that wouldn't heal. The family was smiling again, but behind those smiles was a truth no one else could see, a truth that hurt more than any lie ever could. Eventually, The truth behind the lie began to show itself in small, painful ways. The sister who once spoke of helping the family soon revealed her real intentions without even realizing it. What was meant to ease the parents' struggle slowly turned into a show of self-indulgence. The money that was supposed to bring stability began disappearing piece by piece, spent on new clothes, expensive dinners, and things that had nothing to do with the home that needed saving. Each new purchase was a reminder that what was given out of love had been twisted into something selfish. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about watching something pure lose its meaning right before the eyes of the one who made it possible. There was a quiet devastation in seeing it happen. The parents, still believing the money was their daughter's selfless gift, continued to praise her, blind to the truth behind her actions. They had no idea that what they thought was generosity had turned into greed. It was painful to watch them beam with pride while she flaunted things that never should have existed in the first place. Every time she laughed, every time she showed off what she had bought, it felt like a fresh wound. The act that was supposed to heal the family had instead created a new kind of pain, one that couldn't be spoken out loud. The guilt that came after was suffocating. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was a deep sadness mixed with regret. There was guilt for trusting her, guilt for not saying anything sooner, and guilt for allowing the parents to live inside a lie. The silence that was meant to protect them now felt like the very thing destroying the family's foundation. The thought of speaking up lingered constantly, but the fear of hurting the ones who were already too fragile always won. It became a battle between heart and conscience, between telling the truth and preserving the illusion of peace. Every night brought the same thoughts. How everything could have been different. How one small confession had turned into a spiral of deceit. The image of that envelope, once a symbol of love, now haunted the mind like a ghost that refused to fade. The act of kindness that had once brought comfort now brought pain. It became impossible to escape the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. There was a deep ache in realizing that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the ones who share your own blood. The sister's lie wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a choice, one that shattered something sacred. The guilt wasn't only about the money or the lie, but about the loss of trust, the breaking of something that could never truly be repaired. The pain settled deep. A constant reminder that love, when betrayed, doesn't just hurt, it changes everything. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't arrive with anger or shouting. It came quietly in fragments, slipping through conversations and small moments until there was no way to ignore it anymore. Lies have a way of unraveling themselves, no matter how carefully they're woven. It started with a misplaced receipt, a comment that didn't match a story, and then one detail after another that began to contradict what had been said. The illusion the sister had built around herself began to crack, and beneath it, the truth waited, unforgiving and undeniable. The parents who once glowed with pride now sat in stunned silence, faces pale as realization settled in. The daughter they had celebrated had deceived them, and the love that once filled the room was replaced by confusion and disappointment. The moment they learned the truth felt like the air had been sucked out of the world. Their voices trembled, their eyes filled with disbelief. The silence between everyone was heavier than any words could be. There was no satisfaction in the truth being exposed, only sorrow. The truth didn't heal. It broke something deeper. The parents struggled to make sense of it all, torn between hurt and guilt. They couldn't understand why the person they trusted most would take something so sacred and twist it into a lie. They didn't know the quiet pain that had been carried all along, or how much strength it had taken to remain silent while watching their happiness built on deception. The sister tried to defend herself at first, her words stumbling, excuses falling apart as quickly as she spoke them. The more she tried to explain, the clearer it became that there was no justification for what she had done. Her tears came not from regret for the betrayal, but from fear of losing the affection she had stolen through deceit. It was too late. The damage had already been done. The family that once felt unbreakable now stood divided, their bond tainted by mistrust and silence. The revelation changed everything. The house that once echoed with warmth now felt hollow, filled with the weight of unspoken emotions. The parents withdrew into themselves, Their laughter replaced by quietness. The sister's presence became a shadow of guilt. And the one who had given from the heart was left to face the ruins of what was meant to be an act of love. There was no joy in being right, no relief in being seen. The truth had cost too much. Through the pain came a harsh understanding. Sometimes doing good doesn't bring peace. Sometimes love leads to heartbreak when placed in the wrong hands. The lesson was painful but permanent. Silence, trust, and sacrifice had built a fragile dream, and betrayal had shattered it. In the end, the act meant to heal had left scars that would never fully fade. It became a quiet truth carried forward, a reminder that love without honesty is only an illusion waiting to break. In the end, what began as an act of pure love turned into a painful lesson about trust, silence, and the hidden cost of kindness. It showed that even the most selfless intentions can be shattered when placed in the wrong hands. The money was never about wealth. It was about love, gratitude, and the desire to give back without needing anything in return. But what followed revealed something far deeper than betrayal. It uncovered how fragile family bonds can be when truth is replaced with lies. The heartbreak wasn't just in losing money. It was in losing faith in someone who was once believed to be safe. Yet even through the pain, there was growth. The wound taught that love must be paired with honesty, that sacrifice should never demand silence, and that real strength comes not from giving without recognition, but from standing firm when betrayal tests the soul. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the quiet courage to love deeply, fall hard, and rise again with the wisdom to never mistake silence for peace and never confuse loyalty with blindness.